Hello, fellow fumblers, and welcome to another episode of the Film Fumblers podcast, the show where four friends, sometimes three, fumble through your favorite films. Today, we're reviewing Moonlight, a movie released in 2016 and directed by Barry Jenkins. Without further ado, my name's Adrian.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Taryn.
All right, yeah, no James tonight. Couldn't make it for this one, but which is, I'd be curious to see what he had to say about this one. And I don't know if he's going to watch all of this live, at least, because he says he hadn't watched the movie just yet. So,
Yeah, I'm also interested in his opinion.
all right, let's take this shot really quick before we forget. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Wow, that was bad.
Woo!
Oh, God. Ooh. I'm awake
Oh,
now.
man.
What'd you shoot?
Just Tito's, man. Ugh.
Tito's, and then Taryn's drinking Adobe Igloo. That's like a malty beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not great to chase with. Neither is an IPA. I've said this probably the last 3 episodes.
But it's
Rough.
like, when am I getting another drink for a chaser, you know? It's, you gotta do
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
gotta do.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
True.
You're right. Yeah, so we're launching in celebrating Black History Month. It is the beginning of February. This is our first movie of February 2021. Yeah, Moonlight. Let's get right into it. I had heard about this. Okay, so first and foremost, A24. So in Jay's mind, I already imagine. Oh, he's wearing the A24. Wearing the A24 shirt right now.
J24 is
here.
in chat.
J24.
You know we out here.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many other A24s I've seen. I've maybe only seen I think I've seen less than 5 A24s, if I'm being honest.
Really?
I
I'm
think
like
so.
at 10 or more, I think.
Wow.
Well, you seem
But-
to watch a few more, and maybe you'll be converted too.
Well, oh man, now that I think about it, Lighthouse is also A24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lighthouse, is The Witch?
Project.
Yeah.
Is The Witch?
The Witch.
And then of course Midsummer and Hereditary. Okay, so I've seen
Yeah,
quite a
I've
few.
seen
Then.
Yeah.
I've seen a few. And now Moonlight.
Okay, so did that color your interest or opinion going into the movie? Does that affect you yet or at all?
Okay. I think it may have a little bit, and maybe to its detriment. And I hate to say that because I remember. So I wanted to watch this movie with my girlfriend Samantha, and I was like, all right, like it's A24, and like I text her that, and when she got to my house, she's like, I'm not quite sure if I know what that means. And I was like, A24 is the production company with the Hereditary and Midsummer.
They got good
She's like,
taste.
oh, okay. And so I was just super like, yeah, this movie, this is
Hyping
gonna be
it
the
up.
movie, super hyping it up. And so that's probably not a great thing to go into any movie, to be fair, with just, oh, I like the production company, so it's gonna be amazing.
Once you convert, it takes all that away. You just walk in. And
Yeah,
In your head.
gets
I
easy.
mean,
That's funny. I'm like on both of your sides because like I love A24. I'll walk into any movie ready and willing for whatever they want to throw at me. But I feel like for this movie specifically, it was little overhyped for me, like in that sense. So it's interesting. Both things.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Is this
Um,
both your first time watching it?
Yeah.
Okay.
This movie, we were gonna review this a long time ago. It was like, I think it almost won on. We were doing like a gauntlet, and it was like second place or something. We were really close to doing it. I think it was an A24 gauntlet, probably. So I was really looking forward to watching it, and then finally, we got the other opportunity to watch it. So
Yeah.
I was excited for sure going in.
This is my second time. seeing
Okay.
it, so.
Second time.
Yeah.
Nice. So I want to start out with this very interesting fact about this movie. So the budget for this was 1.5 million. This movie won the Oscar for Best Motion Picture in 2016. This movie had the smallest budget for a movie that won Best Picture since Rocky.
Yeah,
in
it's like the second lowest,
1976.
right? Or something?
But
like
Rocky
ever?
Yeah, ever. But Rocky had a budget of 1.1 million, but that was $1976.
True.
So if you
Oh.
adjust for inflation, this movie has the lowest budget to win Best Picture of all time,
That's so
which is
badass.
kind of fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's really fucking cool.
There's a lot of
1.5 million
firsts
budget.
in
Yeah.
that category. It's like, let's see, the first with an all-black cast, the first LGBTQ related film, and the second lowest grossing film, I guess, to win
I feel like
Best
it should
Picture.
be first. It should be first. Like they should just consider that first. 1976.
Well, it says
1.1
behind
million.
the Hurt Locker. Second
Oh,
lowest.
that's-
Oh, grossing. Sorry, how much money it made. Sorry.
Oh, I see. I see.
So wow, yeah, it's got both of those, lowest budget and lowest
Damn.
money. That's crazy. Wasn't there like a little fiasco about that? Like
Was
at the because the person that announced it accidentally said La La Land or something.
Oh no! Was it like the?
Wasn't that this?
Oh,
I think it was
shit.
this. Let me see.
That
if I
would
They
can-
be
were the same
hilarious.
year, so.
Was
that
it
makes
Steve
sense.
Harvey announcing it? It might have been.
Ah, shit. All right, keep
Um,
talking. I'm looking.
No, yeah, I'm not sure, but either way, I mean that's like insanely impressive. It also won the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture. It won Best Supporting Role. I'm gonna butcher his name. Mahershala Ali won that.
Mahershala.
That was
yeah.
yeah, and then Best Adapted Screenplay. So
Yeah,
three
'cause
Oscars.
it's based on a play, right? Or it takes
Yeah,
influence from a play.
yeah, that was the writer had. The writer is different from the director. What is his name?
They both
Adele
wrote it.
Romansky?
The writer
Yeah,
wrote
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and the director, yeah. But he helped write the screenplay for the movie.
Yeah, all the stuff that happens is
Okay.
kind of like a fusion of their past, basically, which is pretty
okay.
sick. Honestly, that's a cool idea to make a movie about like two different people's lives if it was like the
Mhm.
one. Really cool.
Yeah.
My mistake.
And
Adele
the-
Romansky is the producer. I'm sorry. The screenplay is written by Barry Jenkins, and also story is by Terrell Elvin McCraney.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he wrote the play in like
Mhm.
2003 or something. And then he just like put it away basically. And like the opportunity came up to make something like this, and
Yeah.
he decided to like dust it off and make it happen. Which is always interesting to me how like especially in 2003. I mean, I can't even like think back to that time. That was, you know,
We were 10.
yeah, like, it'd be hard to say what was going on in the world, but like to write something like this in that time, like right any time earlier than when it
That's
was written,
true,
it's
yeah.
like you're just getting crazier and crazier as you go back. But yeah, it's this movie. There's like a lot. There's a lot here, right? There's like many layers. I mean, for me, like I wasn't sure how I felt about it being told the way it was, like in 3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very much play-esque, right? Acts,
Yep.
different
Yeah.
acts.
Yeah.
And after the second time watching it, I decided that I really like it. Like the first part, right? You know, which opens with like a title card. Any movie that has title cards is probably really good. Just gonna throw that out there.
Love it.
I don't
Love
know about
title
that.
cards. Love that
Um,
shit.
But it opens with chapter 1, right? Act 1, which is called Little.
Little. Yeah.
And it's when we see Chiron's childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the movie opens with this beautiful like rotating shot, like they're just like
Dizzying, dude.
constantly like circling, right? And they use these lenses. This is the thing I noticed on my second viewing. They use these lenses that basically create like a very blurred background that at the like fringes of the edge of the frame kind of morph. They go into like a circular. It like moves.
Isn't
so if, like,
there-
a tree is still? It kind
It's
of
almost like a
bends.
fisheye thing.
There's
or-
a name for that, right?
Not
Isn't that
really.
called chromatic aberration?
Wow.
Kind of.
Isn't that what that is?
It's like in the lens world they call it like a swirly bokeh. So like that is like
All right, I like swirly bokeh
Yeah.
better.
Swirly bokeh. That sounds
I
like
think
a
that's how you say the
cocktail.
word. It's bokeh or bokeh or something like that. But basically, yeah, it takes the background, right? Because there's the dynamic range and it separates it from what you're seeing, but
Mm.
it blends it and it kind of gives it this like circular warping. And a lot of people use those lenses to like kind of show like a dream or like a memory or like
Yeah, make it
altered
look
reality.
like fuzzy, like yeah.
Yeah, and it is very fuzzy, right? It's like very bright and it does look kind of dreamlike, but it is like a memory. It's like the past, right? You're starting at the beginning, but it's
Right.
like this has already happened.
So does
So
it
I
drop
really like
that later?
It does, yeah.
Nice, that's cool.
In the third act, it drops it completely, but in the second act, it gets a little bit
Yeah, I
like
saw.
lessened.
I didn't look too far into it, but I saw somewhere that each act they use like a different kind of film, I think.
They used the goal was that they colored and edited the footage to emulate different film
Yeah,
stocks from
sure.
different providers like Fuji, Kodak, whatever.
Hmm.
So each act has a different look that kind of matches that.
Yeah.
But they also like correlate with, where we are in the timeline and shit like that. It's really cool. Like
Yeah.
just
Whoa.
small
That's really,
detail
yeah.
stuff, but it's awesome. And I didn't even notice that the first time I watched this.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the what is it called? I already forgot the name that you said. Swirly.
Swirly.
Swirly,
Yeah.
swirly bokeh.
Really broke.
Like I didn't notice
Yeah,
that
I
exact
could be
thing,
butchering that.
but I did notice like it was I don't know if it was like blurry or like something, right? It would just felt off at the beginning, like
Mm.
behind, especially when Mahershala Ali was like just in the frame by himself, like on the street and stuff. I was like, is this like a
Right.
fake background? Why does it look so weird? But I guess that explains it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's really cool to see that stuff used. And that what's cool even more so is like those are things that you don't have to do later. Like the lens can just do that itself, so it's like cheap to do, but it's not really done as often as you'd think.
Yeah, I like that
Wow.
it's like has a narrative purpose too. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that adds a lot for sure. That it's relevant to like the sequence of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we kind of mentioned, it's 3 acts essentially, and there are 3 lead actors who play the part of the main character Chiron. So yeah, the first, I don't know, it's weird. Okay, I feel like the first act with Chiron with Little, the act Little, was like for sure my favorite. I think it was like my favorite chunk of the movie, and I think the second act was my second favorite, and the third act was probably my third favorite. So I think, and then not that the third was bad necessarily. I think I don't know. Part of me wishes that with the first act, like there was so much storytelling that was happening, and I think it was just like everything was so intense, and you had like Juan as the mentor, and that whole relationship with Juan and Chiron. I like loved that. Like I loved that every time they were on screen together, I was so captivated. And spoiler alert, the next act, we just learned that Juan died, that he passed
Yeah,
away.
dude.
And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh fuck, like we learned it in such a weird way too. Like I think what's the girl's name? Teresa? Is that
Teresa, yeah.
yeah. She just kind of like casually mentions something that maybe alludes to him not being there, and then his mom says like, "Oh, I haven't seen Teresa since the funeral,"
Yeah.
and Juan's not on screen, and you're just like, okay,
It's like 2 lines in the whole movie.
Well, that
right.
kid, and then the kid gives a shit for it.
The bully does say it eventually. He
Oh,
says
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
after he's been dead for a minute, huh?" Yeah, like he says.
Yeah.
But I was just like, fuck, man. I was honestly really disappointed when they killed Juan's character or Juan, because I felt like that relationship could have had so much more to go to endure, but at the same time, like it also fits, which I think we'll find later when we get into other topics, but it kind of fits the whole real life narrative where, I mean, Juan's a drug dealer. Like
Right.
that's a risky job, right? Like you don't know when you're coming home, like anything could go wrong, right, in a drug deal. So
Yeah, that's what like Juan. I mean, Juan as a character is very interesting, but the relationship that they have is like it's just so deep. There's so many
yeah,
layers. It's so
Bonds.
complicated. Like Chiron, we learn that Juan's a drug dealer. Um, it's clear that they live in like housing project neighborhoods. A lot of this stuff is abandoned. It's clear that Chiron's been probably bullied his whole life, and all of that happens in like the first like 10 minutes,
yeah,
and
very
then
quickly.
you learn that Chiron's mother is like a drug addict, right, and a prostitute and doing all kinds of shit. And when Chiron, who's what, maybe like 6, 7 years old at this point,
Yeah,
is piecing this together and they're having like dinner or whatever
Oh,
at
dude.
Juan and
Oh
Teresa's,
man.
and he starts
Yeah.
Heartbreaking,
asking all those
dude.
questions where he puts together basically that like, Juan, you're a drug dealer, right? And he's like, yeah, and he's ashamed, right? Because he really does care for Chiron, which is interesting.
Right.
But then he's like, and my mom does drugs, doesn't she? And he's like, yeah. And so he's like, you're enabling my mom to, you know, do this and like abandon me basically. And like that whole thing, just like that scene just fucking drops on you like a ton
Yeah.
of bricks, dude.
Yeah, well, there's another element that is really noteworthy here, where all of the kids are calling him gay, like calling them the very, very no word for gay, and he's just like, what is that? He's asking what it is because he's being called
Right.
it constantly, and he just asks like, am I that? Like, is that who I? And Teresa says a beautiful thing, which is like the perfect thing that you would say to a kid in that situation is like, you don't have to know right now. Like, you don't have to. This
Right.
isn't the
Yeah.
time for you to have to figure that out. Which his sexuality is like this whole other like just throws this whole other wrench into like living in this fucked up world where he doesn't have a father. His male father figure is a drug dealer, seemingly, like a very good guy, but a drug dealer nonetheless. And his
Right.
mom is addicted to crack.
Yeah.
So
And
Yeah.
even like surrounded by kids, like just all of them are just like, I don't know, infected with this toxic masculinity that's just fucking him up so much more because I don't know, there's just like this expectation
Right.
for all these kids to be like manly and all this stuff.
You gotta be hard, dude.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's what was like actually a little bit relatable in this for me is like growing up. I mean, we grew up in the poorest fucking state in the country, if not the poorest, then close to it.
yeah, yeah,
And we went to some of the worst schools in the country, like no doubt about it, right? So like there was like a sense of like you had to be hard when I was like young, right? When I was like growing up in like elementary school even and shit. Like people were fucking mean and like
Yeah, dude.
yeah,
even in middle school, especially in middle school,
Yeah,
but
for
we all
sure.
kind of like found our group and it wasn't really a big deal after that. But like there was a lot of times where, you were in like gym class or just walking the halls and like I had people that would just like shove like doors into me and shit just to like do it, like to prove
Yeah.
they were hard. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? This is so weird.
Yeah,
But
dude.
like, for a lot of people, like that's the reality. And if you show weakness, then you're
Just
fucked,
get it
right?
more. Yeah.
eat you alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was actually
mean,
thinking about that too. Middle school,
and
like getting bullied, and then I remember like standing up one time, and then like they're just like, "All right, you're cool now because you did that." But like if I didn't do that, they just keep doing it. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you,
yeah,
man?
I know. And it's not like our situations
Nearly this bad.
were the same as Sharon's at
Yeah.
all, like on a like
Yeah.
socioeconomic level, right? Which is like a whole other thing. Like this is why Juan's a drug dealer, right? Like there's just a lot of systems in place that, cause these things to happen. And we weren't there, but we were like pretty low, I would say, on the totem pole. And it showed. Like a lot of the kids that we went to school with
Yeah.
kind of came from similar backgrounds
Yeah.
and yeah, they acted hard, and which is like so interesting to see the progression of the characters over the length of the movie, right? Like seeing
Mhm.
how Chiron ends up versus how uh Kevin ends up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like both very different, but still real life, like still really actually happens.
Mhm.
Yeah. Definitely. One other interesting thing, that I saw was the director intentionally made it so the three actors that play Chiron did not did not communicate with one another during production, like, which I thought was an interesting choice because it felt like you followed Chiron and his story, and like the progressions or the changes, I guess, in actor felt pretty natural and felt like okay, yeah. I remember saying like while I was watching, I was like, I think they casted, especially the second Chiron, like really well. Like the transition felt really smooth, but they didn't have any communication with one another, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah, he said like so they don't copy each other or something. It's like
Yeah,
it's
so they
weird
don't like
because it's supposed to be
influence
the
the
same
character.
person, but it's like that's
But you
just
would think,
how. Yeah.
yeah, you would think that he would want them to emulate how the other person was on screen, but just an interesting directing choice that I think worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just shows
for
how
sure.
much he changed because he's not like he
Right.
was
Yeah.
even like a couple decades before each time.
Did
Or
you
one.
feel like that worked? Like the actors that they chose to portray him at each stage?
Yeah, I think so
Um,
for sure.
I think the one that really worked was the first act and the second act. So the first act was what called Little, and the second was the second called Black, or was it called
It's just Chiron.
Chiron? Okay. Um, that transition felt the most natural, and I think the third, I don't know, but that's the thing is like the third Chiron has gone through hell. Like he's gone through
Right.
fucking hell, and that was the turning point. That was like the coming of age where he literally had to make a decision to be to like fall into this, you know, whatever you want to call it, like toxic masculinity thing where like he's just like, no, I'm gonna be a fucking man. I'm gonna be hard. Like no one's gonna fuck with me. Like
Right.
that was the what he had to fall into.
Yeah.
So of course he would be the most different after that transition.
Yeah, it felt like the
Yeah.
biggest time jump. I don't know if they say like years or anything, like how long it's been between each one, but that one felt like the longest jump, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think Kevin mentions that it has been like 10 years. I think he says a decade when he
Okay.
called them.
Okay.
So he was
It's
probably
like
what
mid
like
20s now at the
he
end.
was probably like
Yeah.
16 in
Mid to late 20s.
in high school, and then he seemed like mid 20s. So but yeah, and then again, to add the whole layer of him struggling with his sexual identity,
Right.
like in this, world where you have to be such a man or you're going to get bullied, was, I don't know, it was really like, I don't know what the word is. It was like uncomfortable watching. I was like, fuck, like this is so, I felt a lot for the character. Like I felt for Chiron a lot, and I empathized a lot just with like how hard that must have been, kind of thing. I guess sympathy is
Yeah.
probably the better word than empathy, but
Yeah, I was gonna say that
yeah.
this movie made me think of, I think it's a quote from Roger Ebert. I'm not totally sure on that, but he basically says like movies are empathy machines. Like that's this movie is such a good example of that. I think 'cause it's like not a common like
Mhm.
perspective, and like it makes you fucking feel it, dude. It's fucking really good at it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like this is where the movie is like it really, really I mean, in my opinion, this movie is like a borderline masterpiece just because like you're telling this very complex thing, right? Of like not only like are you just in this like really hard situation to begin with, but now like you're trying to figure out, who you are. You're coming to terms with the fact that like you probably are gay, right, in this world. And this is the story being told through a lens, right, of like this like art film style,
Yeah.
but the subject matter is like gritty and like raw, and like I don't know, it's the two sides, right? The two
Yeah.
sides of the coin are always present in the movie. Whether it's the shots that we see, the like art film style shots, whether it's the music where it's like classical
So
orchestrated
good.
music but playing hip hop things, right? Like
Mhm.
all of these elements are being fused all the time throughout the whole movie, and it's like so fucking good every time. It's kind of insane. And
Yeah.
it is like this is it was, I guess, a new space for characters like this to be presented in these kinds of films. Like this just wasn't like an art house style film before this movie. Like
What do you mean by characters like this?
like people, I mean, I would say not only like, black people in poverty or in
Mhm.
rough situations of drug dealing and shit like that, but also, I mean, as far as I know, like also gay people and putting them in the same place,
Yeah.
like
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
all of that, because like art film traditionally, right, is like basically just like probably lower budget, independent, weird subject matter made for aesthetics, not for mass appeal type of thing. But
Mhm.
it's never about something like this, you know?
Sure.
It's so this was like a very
They're like more abstract usually, and this is like very grounded and real.
yeah, it still has the elements of like aesthetics and thought, you know, thinking things through and a lot of symbolism and a lot of shit like that. But
Mhm.
um it just grips you in like a totally different way and
Yeah, it in a lot of ways for me, there was times where it felt like too real. Like I think maybe I'm just hardwired and trained in watching movies that, you know, you see a love story develop and you see romance develop between two characters, and it's like this A to B type of thing where like, you know, at first they meet and then they like kind of flirt with each other, then they fall in love, then they're intimate, and then they go on and have this relationship, right? It's like this very linear path.
Mhm.
And you know, in reality, that's not how things happen all the time. And I think especially when you're growing up in this type of world, specifically speaking about Chiron and Kevin's relationship and how they have this, it's like this like brotherly, like you're my homie kind of love for each other, but also there's some intimacy there. And but once the intimacy starts, you think like, okay, are they gonna like go on and like be in a relationship? No, that's not how it happens at all. And so there were times where I think my brain was just trying to go that way, and uh, it didn't happen. So it was breaking this weird pattern that I set out, and was interesting to get it used to. I don't know. This movie probably needs another watch for sure to kind
Yeah.
of deal with that and to kind of
And you see like it starts right even in the first act where they are like wrestling in the
yeah,
park.
yeah.
Like there's like it's both things. It's I'm trying to be hard, but then like I'm like exploring this. Like what
Hmm.
are we doing? What does this feel like to me, you know?
Yeah.
And just like the complication of like that you must feel like going through that. I don't know, it's crazy. And the way that they shoot it, like where the shots are drawn out, they're kind of long and you know, you just gotta
So
Yeah.
sit with it
close,
and
dude.
yeah, it's very close in, it's very intimate, and it does make you like kind of think like, holy shit, like this is deep, right? And
Yeah.
it just goes up from there. Like in the second act, it gets even more complicated because they do actually like get real intimate on the
Right.
beach, right? Which
Right.
that scene felt like a fucking dream at first because
Yeah.
Kevin just
Yeah.
shows up out of nowhere, and I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
But then Kevin has to fight him, you know, and then
Oh
that
man.
just adds like a whole, you know, but we see
Oh.
both sides again. There's the getting intimate, what are we doing, and kind of exploring themselves,
Hmm.
and then being forced to be hard and like show, you know, that they're not to be like fucked with or whatever.
Yeah.
And even that scene where he what's the bully's name?
I don't know.
He makes Kevin punch Chiron. Even there, Kevin is like trying to be like, stay down, like stop
Yeah.
getting up because I don't want to hurt you. But Chiron is like, no, I gotta prove that I'm not, you know, like I'm
Yeah.
not a pussy. And it's like, holy
But
shit, that scene is fucking crazy,
Yeah.
dude.
It's like not only like I gotta be hard, but it's also like you don't want to hit me, stop fucking hitting me kind of thing. Like he's
Yeah,
like
he's
testing
mad.
him, I guess, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, are you gonna stand up for me, or
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Because Kevin is in this weird thing where Kevin, you know, he his sexuality is in this weird place where he's still hooking up with girls, seemingly, right? But he does have that like curiosity, whatever you want to call it, and but he's on this other side of it where all everyone at school is like he's the cool guy, you know. He's still like fucks bitches, gets money, like he's just like, yeah, like the bully comes up to him, is just like, yo, what up, like they're cool. And so Kevin has to maintain that status, and
Yeah.
so that's what like they you know, every character, there's so much on the line, right? Like, and it sounds so silly, but because they're just in high school, but this is their livelihood, this is their life, like this is
Right.
in some cases life or death, right? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
the whole like kind of like symbolism of the ocean and the constant and the constant appearance of waves, water, in
Hmm.
this movie is kind of like a big like representation of that. Like I think there's pieces where Juan kind of drops like little nuggets of knowledge to Chiron about the ocean and how, at at the same time is feeling like you can float and be free, but it also carries like the waves carry like a certain force like that do make
Hmm.
you it can just take you at any time, which is kind of like how he lives like day to day.
Yeah.
And even though he finds his comfort in water, right? Whether it's the ocean, the bath that he makes himself when his mom's not there, the constantly putting his face in ice and shit like that.
That shit's heavy.
Just
It's
like
like
trying to
that's what
wash it away or what? I don't know.
yeah, there's like cleansing
Yeah, yeah.
elements of cleansing, there's elements of comfort, there's elements of like, this is where he feels the most comfortable. And it probably is because like his life does feel like an ocean where you can feel free and like there's unlimited possibility. And at the same time you can get swallowed and fucking
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah, who is it? That
it's
the scene where they're at the ocean is such a beautiful scene on a lot of levels. They have this really interesting conversation. Um, what is I can't remember. I think Chiron asks Kevin, "Do you ever cry?" And Kevin just says, "No." Like, what the fuck? Like, he kind of thinks about it. He's like, "No." He's like, "I don't. Of course I don't cry." He's
Yeah.
kind of still has that front. And then Chiron just admits, like, I cry all the time. Sometimes I cry so much I think I'm just gonna turn into drops. So what does he say? Something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
and
Jeez,
then
man.
and then Kevin kind of just like, and then you could roll into the ocean, and it's like it going on what Jay says. It's like there's a very strong relationship with Chiron and the water and the ocean. And
Yeah.
yeah.
it's
It's
it's heavy. It's deep.
it's poetic, dude, and I love the water too. Like I when I couldn't even walk yet. I crawled. We lived in these apartments, and I crawled into the hot tub, like
Oh
the,
shit.
the gate was open, and
Oh
me
god.
as a baby just like straight up went crawled and plopped in the hot tub, and there's people in there, and they were just like, oh, and, like picked me up out of the
Is
water,
this your
Whose
and my
baby?
baby
mom
is this?
my mom comes running out and they're just like, yeah, he was just like floating, just there. And I've never really been like afraid of it. And I know some people are afraid of it, especially like deep water or oceans and shit.
Yeah.
For me, that like feels I'm the most comfortable in that environment. Like I know how to swim really well. I like to,
Mm.
explore deep water, shit like that.
Yeah.
So I had it was cool to see it kind of used in that way for me. I think a good scene at the beach with Chiron and Juan is where you kind of, or for me, where I kind of got like the real like, okay, Juan is his dad. Like Juan is being a dad right here. Like when he's
Oh yeah.
holding him and
Teaching
teaching him
his
how to
son.
float and stuff,
Oh.
and it just goes from there. Like when they have dinner the next time, he's like, sit at this other chair because you never want your back to the door, right? You always want to. He was like teaching him survival,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy, but like you
It is.
know there's that there's that deeper thing where he is a drug dealer. He is enabling Chiron's mother, if not directly, right? Because
Yeah.
he's not selling her the drugs, maybe, but he's still selling other people drugs and like, enabling
Yeah.
this life to happen for other people. And
Yeah.
yeah, super complex and super
Yeah.
Yeah. Even just Juan's character going through some shit when he does run into Chiron's mom.
Oh, that was a
God
good
damn, dude.
scene.
that was
Yeah.
crazy.
That confrontation, I was like, Jesus Christ. And he's like, are you gonna raise my son? And he's like, are you? And they're all yelling at each other. It's like, oh my god, this is so intense, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He was
yeah.
he was up in her face. I was expecting him to slap her. Like I was like ready for him to backhand her. And I was just like it she kind of deserves it, but like also like don't hit a woman, but like I don't know what the fuck is like there was just like some weird uh conflict that was going on there for sure.
Dude,
But
Yeah.
honestly, shouts out to the mom as an
oh, she did
actress.
really
Holy
fucking well.
shit, dude. You hated her. Or
Yeah.
like, and the scenes where, especially when Sharon is little, where they would face off, like in the hallway, you know?
Oh
And there's
man.
no dialogue, it's just
Yeah.
like sound and like looking and going back and forth. That shit was heavy. It was
Yeah.
Dude,
crazy.
every time they were together, it was just so like you're walking on eggshells, dude. Like
Yeah.
one of the scenes that broke my fucking heart was when it's like the first act and he's a little kid and he just had this wonderful day. I think with Juan, right? And he gets back home and he's smiling, he's all happy, and then reality sets in and he sees his mom all pass out on the couch and he's just like, that smile just fucking melts away and he's like, all right, I gotta go take care of my mom. Like I was like, fuck, man, it hurts to watch.
Honestly,
rough.
shout out to young Chiron too, because
Yeah, he was really
how
good.
the fuck
Yeah.
do you act like that young, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he did amazing.
Like almost no lines and it was so good still.
Yeah.
They did a lot of interesting stuff with the storytelling in that first act where they're kind of revealing that Chiron's mother is drug addict. Like the first time he returns home, Juan drops him off. He's about to put like a movie into the VHS player or whatever, and um, his mom's just like, "No, you can't watch a movie right now, whatever." The next time he goes home, after we're kind of thinking that maybe his mom's on drugs, there's a shot of like where the TV would be, and it's gone, it's missing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it kind of just alludes to she sold it, like it was sold for crack money, you know.
Yeah.
And they have like little things like that that are interesting.
Dude, the details, man. This is
Yeah.
where the movie gets a high score for me because it's when you're paying this much attention, dude. Like this is like the art of film. Like this is it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And but when you're telling a story like this, holy shit, man. It just amplifies it that much more.
Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about. I feel like we've leaned more towards talking about chapter 1 and chapter 2, the first two acts. Um, let's dive into more of the third act because this is where, for me, I think it started to fall off a little bit. It I don't know. I can't say it progressively got worse because that's absolutely the wrong thing. Maybe it progressively got less great for me, if that makes sense. Because I really loved the first two acts. The third one I struggled with, so I want to hear your guys' take on that.
I mean, I have thoughts, but I've been talking a lot, so I don't
No,
know.
it's okay, man.
Good talking.
I mean, the third act is interesting, and it's the one that you kind of remember the least about because it's not not a lot happens, right?
Right.
But you do see. Okay, before we go here, though, I do want to just point out one other thing that I
Sure,
noticed.
sure, sure.
In between the transition of Act 1 to Act 2 and Act 2 to Act 3,
The lights.
the lights.
Yeah.
One is blue, one is red.
Red.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're like cop car lights, but you're only seeing one color at a time, right?
Ah.
It's really cool. Just a really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I did
The
notice that.
second time that you see it is the time that he actually gets in a cop car and goes to jail, right? And so the ending of Act 2 is like the end of Chiron's innocence. This is where he is confronted with the reality of like prison life,
Yeah.
and this is where the facade of being hard drops and the reality of being hard kicks in, right?
Right.
And that's what Act 3 opens with. He's in the badass car. He has the same little crown as Juan.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, by the way.
Killer. He's
Yeah.
trapped in
Yeah.
the planet.
And that
And-
was
It's just, for me, I get it. It's not in itself, it's not like a crazy act in terms of like things happening, but it is like the transformation is complete. The lies that
Right.
he has had to live his entire life have become true, and that has a lot of depth. Like, 'cause even though he lives those things, he is still not those things.
right.
You know?
And we see, I mean, there was the turning point that we talked about earlier where Kevin has to beat the shit out of Chiron. That was the turning point where Chiron is just like, okay, fucking no more Mr. Nice Guy. He goes into the classroom, gets the fucking chair and breaks it over that motherfucker's head. And like,
Dude, I
holy
literally
shit.
almost jumped out of my chair. I was like, "Oh fuck yeah, dude!"
But
Let's
that was,
go.
you see before, like Jay was saying, it was the front of being hard, right? And that's when he makes the conscious decision. That's when the switch flips. There's a scene earlier where he does that like flinch thing, you know, but you could tell it's so like, you know, it's so
Yeah.
their backs are turned.
A shower thought. For, like the
Yeah.
guy can already laugh and he's like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does the and it's laughable, but he makes that transition because that's what makes it really complicated because you know his relationship with Kevin meant that thing meant so much to him, and then Kevin doing that to him, and Chiron knowing why he had to really just that's what flipped the switch. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of to note that for sure. Okay, so let's go on Act 3.
there's one more thing in Act 3 that I did notice that was really cool. Is the camera thing. So when he's driving and he picks up that dude, the camera is attached to the door.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he opens the door and the camera like swings out and you see him. That shot was so cool.
Yeah,
And
that's
this is
cool.
one of those like low budget things, right? What do we
Yeah.
do with the camera? Just fucking put it on the door. Well, we have to open the door. Just fucking leave it on the door. Like that's sick, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
came out cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just fucking tape it on there, dude. I don't know.
Just leave it. Why do we have to just leave it?
Yeah, because like when it's in the facing the inside of the car, it's like a normal ass shot, but then it swings out. You're like, oh fuck! Like it kind of takes you with it, like literally. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So we see now that Chiron is this hardened drug dealer. He turns into a drug dealer, you know, just like Juan was. He's like busting the chops of the people below him, kind of thing, you know, and just a completely different person. It's almost like
Yeah.
you have to like you know that it's Chiron because because this is the only character you're really following, but there's also a dream that he had. I think he wakes up from a dream that he had of his mom staring at him in the hallway. I don't know when that happens exactly. If that happens right at the beginning of Act 3 or but it was like a big thing where he's kind of remembering his childhood and you know, you're seeing his journey, but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
the interesting part about that is like when Kevin calls him and he's like, yo, this guy came in, he played this song, made me think of you, blah blah blah. Like
right.
you know that Chiron has not stopped thinking about those events for as long as he's been alive.
Yeah.
And with Kevin, you're like not really sure. You're like, does he even really care? Like obviously he's thinking about Chiron in the moment. He probably thinks about him every now and then. But like he also has a child, right? We learned that he had a relationship with a woman.
Right.
They are not together anymore, but they're cool, but they have a kid and they have to be cool for the kid. And like it's a whole ass thing. Whereas like Chiron's entire existence is battling these feelings inside of him. And like he never stopped thinking about that, you know?
Yeah.
And that difference is really interesting. On top of the differences in the past that they had to go. Like, I mean, Kevin assumingly well, I guess he did go to jail at some point, right? They do mention that. But Chiron went to jail, you know, came out, got hard, started trapping, all that shit. And Kevin like started a family, then went to jail, and they just drop a little line about that where he's like, I got sent up for some stupid shit like we always do. It's always stupid shit. And I was for me struck hard because I was thinking about in this other movie that I watched about Fred Hampton, the police literally locked him up for like 5 to 7 years or some shit for stealing ice cream, which he like didn't even do. You know, like this is the kind of shit that happened.
Yeah.
And probably still does today.
Oh yeah, absolutely does.
It's
you see it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I shouldn't say probably. It does.
Oh, it absolutely does. Yeah.
And even though this movie is not about that, like they still managed to just drop little hints about it. And that one just hit different for me because of other things that I've seen this week. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to the third act, but it's not my favorite act either. I mean, I agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that transformation, even visually, dude. He's like the scrawniest person I've ever seen in the second act. And then in the third, he is jacked out of his goddamn mind.
Absolutely shredded, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but to go back to Kevin really briefly, like Kevin going into jail, or doing time and then getting out and then still kind of going through and becoming a functioning member of society, right? Like working as as a cook. Um, it just really cements the fact that Kevin is he's very adaptable. He's like a very adaptable person. He can roll with the punches. Like he did it in high school. He's doing it as an adult. Like he got out of the system. He's still on probation. He started a family. It didn't work out with the woman, but he has a job. He's doing well. And Chiron is the polar opposite of that. He can't figure out how to roll with the punches, and he's constantly in battle with society and with himself, and how that thing. So it was this interesting contrast between the two characters, and then their relationship with one another, how they kind of came together. I don't know, it complemented each other, I think, pretty well. So I did like that,
Yeah.
that aspect they had to it.
I like that. I mean, we assume that like Chiron's only father figure was Juan, so like eventually he became that. We don't
Sure.
really know anything about Kevin, but he does mention like, oh, when I was locked up, they threw me on the food line and I really like cooking, so now I'm a cook,
Mhm.
And he,
Right.
like you said, very adaptable. Like he was like, oh, cool, right? Like
Yeah.
he got something out of that experience and he like is happy that that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he just lives his life. Like I think he says, right? He's like, I work this job, I've got this apartment, I don't
Mhm.
have any worries. Like I'm happy with what I'm doing and shit like that. Where he knows, I think even he knows that Chiron is like conflicted as hell on the inside, on the outside, like always kind of unsure of what's gonna happen to him.
Yeah. And that okay, so Kevin calls up Chiron. Chiron's living in a different
Is
city
that
at this point,
controversial?
and Chiron goes back to visit. He speaks with his mom, who's in a rehab center, not doing amazing, but at least she's clean. And then he visits Kevin, and they kind of there's a lot to this movie that I think is very unspoken. I think with all of the relationships in each act, because there's a lot more that has to go on with Juan that's not on screen. There's a lot more I think that goes on with Kevin and Chiron that's not on screen, because the reason that Kevin calls Chiron is because somebody went in that reminded him of Chiron and played a song. Was there a song ever? Were they listening to a song when he dropped him off in the car or something? Did I miss that?
He
Oh.
plays the song for him later.
No, but
There's
like in the car
like
in
a
Act
meaning
2.
between them, you're saying, right?
Right, because I don't think that they actually showed that, which makes me believe that Chiron and Kevin maybe had something more of a relationship. If there
Oh,
was a song that reminded them, it's a romantic song. Like we didn't see that. I
I
don't think
don't
that was
think
shown.
so. I feel like
I
the day after the beach was when he punched him in the face and shit, was it not? It felt like it,
Yeah.
at least.
Well, oh, that's true. But what song would he
I
would
mean,
remind
I was
him
trying to
of?
listen to the lyrics, but I don't remember if it's just like
Yeah,
I don't know, a love song, yeah, and it just kind of
I think
that's all
that's
I
what it is.
thought, yeah.
It's
Okay,
they
okay,
had
okay.
like a song together,
It
but
wasn't
just
their song together that
song
reminded them of each other, but the lyrics resonated,
lyrics.
maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Think
That's
so
what I
Okay,
took.
Me
okay,
too.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. I was trying to think. I was why choose these 3 points of Chiron's life to show, I guess. And I guess it seems like these are like the only 3 little periods of his life where he had someone like an ally to him, like what to let him be himself, if you know what I mean. Like
yeah.
these are like the only times that that's happened, and that just like is so sad. I don't know.
Oh,
It makes
okay.
me really
Because he
sad.
has it with Juan and Teresa.
Yeah, like they
He has
accept
it
him, and then Kevin
with
accepts him,
Kevin.
and then Kevin
Right.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I took it as it was just like three transformational points in his life.
I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, they can do the
The
same thing.
relationship.
It can be both. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. The kind of like, yeah, because I mean, how would you know, at that stage, like if you had anybody that you could talk to about how you were feeling for real, that'd
Yeah.
be huge.
Yeah,
And so
because
this is. Go ahead, Terry.
there's that line that Kevin says or no, not Kevin. Chiron tells him, he's like, I haven't been touched by anyone since
But
you or
you,
whatever, and that was
yeah,
like a long ass time ago, like 10
you're the
years
only one
ago.
who's,
Like there's,
touched me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's like that probably fucking tears through him all the time, you know? It's like, oof.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. There was this thing that I was alluding to earlier that about it being very very real and maybe sometimes too real, where the too not too real in the sense that I was just like, this is weird to be watching on screen, like watching in a movie. It felt like this is this is just how two people would talk to each other, which it doesn't feel written at all, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. You don't want it to seem
Yeah.
scripted. And the dialogue between Kevin and Chiron in the third act, you know, especially when they're at the restaurant, it's kind of awkward. It's a little bit, there's like some weird, you can tell that they're holding things back, and Chiron is having a difficult time with communicating like anything. And part of me, while I was watching it, I was uncomfortable, and I was just like, like, is this just awkward dialogue? Are the two actors not meshing well, or like, is this so fucking good that they're meshing so well that this is how the relationship, this is how the conversation actually would be? It would be this awkward,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah,
I
because,
think
oh, sorry. It's like when they show Chiron in the third act in Atlanta is where he is, and he's fucking
yeah.
with that guy, and he's like all like kind of being more talkative and like, like just
yeah,
personable, I
yeah,
guess. And then once he's talking to Kevin and face to face with him, he like shrinks back to like the
you're
previous
right.
acts. Chiron, he's just like not talking and like not looking
Yeah,
at him. Like I was like, fuck,
yeah. Kevin says you still
little
only
kid.
say three words. You
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah,
And to back up the like realness part too, like they don't that scene is really really interesting because they don't just give you he goes into the diner, they recognize each other, they sit down and eat and drink and talk because they get interrupted. Like Kevin keeps having to leave to go deal with shit
yeah,
at the diner.
yeah,
Like it does feel very real.
hmm,
yeah.
It's I don't know, it's maybe it's deeper. Maybe it's deeper than I think. Like maybe I need to go back and watch the third act again just to be
Yeah.
like, no, it is good, you know?
yeah.
But and I stole this one from Jordan, but when there was some point in the movie she was like, "Oh, Chiron is shy." And I was like, "Oh."
It's so simple, Jordan.
Yeah,
Oh.
because
Perfect.
it's an interesting name, right? Chiron.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, he's shy. And I was like,
And Kevin is the most normal name you could have. Like,
I know.
such a normal. Oh, that's
That's
hilarious.
good.
Yeah, and again, I think, you know, my brain was just hardwired to be like, oh, like they finally meet again 10 years later. They're gonna see each other and just this warm embrace is gonna happen, and they're gonna be like, I've loved you all these years, I've loved you all these years, and run off into the sunset, right? Like that's just where my head
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going. But
Yeah.
um reality reality sets in, and it's just like Chiron is still not comfortable with coming to terms with it. Like he still doesn't he still is holding up that facade of like, no, 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 I'm from the fucking streets. Like this is what I have to do to survive. I can't be
Yeah.
gay. Like, you know, that's kind of this thing that he's struggling with. And which really brings, I mean, let's just bring it home. Like which really brings the very last scene where they're at Kevin's apartment. And like I was actually kind of sad. I heard the beach water. Kevin lives by the beach. I thought they were going to go to the beach and they were going to have that conversation at the beach where it all
Oh, dang.
started, kind of thing. And I was really excited. I was like, oh shit, they're going. Me and Samantha were like, oh my God, they're going to go to the beach. They're going to go to the spot, you know, which I think would be really beautiful. But again, it's reality, right? And so they go into the apartment. They have these very awkward conversations for a while, and then Chiron eventually, as Terrence said, he just says, "You're the only man who's ever touched, or you're the only one who's ever touched me." And you know, the last scene is just a close-up shot of Chiron being vulnerable for one of the only times you see it on screen. Is he's
Probably in
just
his
kind of,
life, dude. Fuck.
and in his life, right?
Yeah.
And you just see him kind of laying on Kevin's chest, and Kevin's just kind of comforting him, and it just just cuts to black, and it's just
Well, there
whoa,
it
like,
flips to young Chiron on the beach.
Yeah.
oh, that's right, that's right, that's
There's
right,
that, and he looks back at the camera, and then it,
that's right, that's right, that's right.
Ah.
Yeah,
dude, so good, dude. It's
yeah.
good. Shit. There's, I, I know that that's like a beautiful like tied up ending. But there's one thing that I noticed in Act 3 that I
Sure.
had
No, take it back. Yeah, that's fine.
when he gets to the diner, he's bumping "I'm a Classic Man," right?
Mm-hmm.
The song,
Mm-hmm.
and like it
But it's
fits everything.
yeah.
He's a classic man. He's ripped. He's hard. He's
It's
all
man to
of it.
man, man's man.
But it's a remix. It's not the original
Yeah.
song.
It's a real OG.
Ah.
Yeah.
That I was like, holy shit, dude. That's fucking big too. That's like big symbolism. Like,
Yeah. It goes
I'm,
back to the whole
That's
classical
cool
music
as
with
fuck.
hip hop playing throughout
yeah,
the film.
exactly. Yeah, it's always the two things just trying to like fight and fuse, and
Mhm.
it's
Exist together.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's intense. This is an intense one. It's an intense one to start off with.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
It's like it's layers deep. Layers
So,
deep for sure.
so you were saying something about the music, the orchestral, I guess, music. I don't know, classical music with hip hop. What do you
Yeah, so
referencing?
throughout the movie there's like that aren't like real songs. There's like
Yeah.
orchestral like transition songs or whatever, kind
Yeah.
of like B-roll songs they're played to like hip hop motifs, like beats or
Oh,
like
are there?
little things taken
Oh,
from
okay.
other not as straightforward as like in Us, where there's like the
I was gonna
very
bring up.
clearly, you know,
Yeah.
what's the song that they do?
I got 5 on it.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
5 on it. It's not like that, but it is like a fusion of
So are the
you know,
classical songs actual songs, or you're just saying there is a layer of hip hop
I
in
think
the songs?
there's it's hip hop. I don't remember if they're real songs or not. They might be, and maybe I just don't know them. But they're like hip hop structured songs
Oh, okay.
played on classical instruments, right?
I
So
see.
like it's the whole thing, right? Packaged up for music. It's what some would say is like proper, right? Being classical with like the hip hop side, which those same people would say is like degenerate or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And is like kind of again the conflict, but like musiconified. Is that a word? Like,
It is now, Jay.
it's these are the details that separate, you know, a good film from a great film for me. And it's, you're already, like I said before, should I just go into my review? I feel like I'm
I
going
feel
into
like
my
you're right.
review
I was
anyway.
just gonna say, let's just start this up. Let's see
Okay.
it.
I thought you were
Um,
gonna say separates a movie from a film, and I was gonna be like, all right, hold on, Jay. Relax, bro.
He's
Go
got
ahead.
the A24 shirt on. I wouldn't be surprised. If he said that.
it's a film. This one's a film.
Film fumblers, not movie fumblers.
Yeah.
No, it's like it's it's heavy, it's deep, it's multiple layers, it's all these things. It's a constant struggle, it's a conflict internally and externally, which is rare because in a lot of like storytelling rules, right? You do one or the other. There's man versus man, there's man versus primordial evil or creature, or there's man versus himself. But in this one, you kind of get a little bit of everything, right?
Right.
And it's a story that is already like very difficult to tell as it is, but to just add and sprinkle in all these little details around it that just boosts it that much more. I mean, that's got to be hard to do, and you have to be paying the fuck attention to it. And this movie was shot in 25 days, dude. That is insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I think are like really interesting and things that I guess that we probably couldn't really relate to, like the fact that like why would somebody like Juan just take in Chiron off the streets for no reason, right? Like that element of culture, I feel like is not really something that I'm familiar with, although it's something that I really love that happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when they're shooting the movie, so for context here, Barry Jenkins and the other writer that wrote the play, they grew up around the same area, like they knew each other. And so they tried to film in the same areas where they grew up. So like these housing projects were like actually places that they lived.
Yeah, most
And
of it
when
was
they,
actually filmed there, right? Yeah.
yeah, and when they brought like this like whole crew to do this movie, you know, people, I would assume like producers and stuff expected like bad things to happen. But one of the producers or somebody who worked on the set was quoted saying like, this is, I've never seen a community come out and show love for this like this movie.
Dude.
Like
Wow.
everybody who was in around like actually living in these places came out and was like, this is sick, like we're gonna, whatever you guys need, like we're here to like
That's
help you to make
amazing.
sure that this goes well, because like those people don't get much representation. Like that's just the reality. And so when this big production, seemingly big, right? You say it has a pretty low budget, comes in, which they even had like police escorts for some of the cast and crew because like people just weren't sure what was gonna happen. Uh, what they got instead was like a pure outpouring of love and community, right? Which just goes right back into the movie. Like you see Juan and Chiron's relationship start out of this
Yeah.
community of love and looking out for one another and shit. And that's cool. And like we need more of that, you know? So there's a lot to learn from, not only on a filmmaking level, but on like a humanity level. Honestly, I don't even know what my score is. Like I'm completely improvising this. Like I
It's
didn't write
rough.
anything
Yeah.
down. But for me, I don't know. I don't think that I can give it anything below a 9 and do it justice. So I think I have to give it like a 9 even.
All right.
Damn. Lower than I
Keeping
thought.
the Film Fumbler Hall of Fame dream alive. Lower than you thought, Taryn. Do you want to go next?
No, for him, for Jay.
No, I'm just
calling
saying.
it a
I'm just saying.
masterpiece and shit. Yeah, I'll go next
I
because
said it borders a masterpiece.
Okay.
borders. I see.
Very good.
Okay, so a 9 out of J. Taryn, take it away.
So yeah, I guess all the opening thoughts that you had, Adrian, were like my main thoughts for this whole thing, where it was like a little overhyped, a little like struck about how the movie played out and like the acts and stuff. Because like, dude, I could have watched a 2-hour movie about just young
Just the first
Chiron,
act.
dude. I was
Yes.
hoping that's what it was because I was like, I want to see Chiron and Juan like do more shit together. Like I could watch this like all day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once it switched, I was like, oh shit, like these are very small like slivers of his life that they're showing. And even the third one, I don't know like where my head was at that point, but even seeing the third one come around, I was like, damn, like where is this going? Like this is a wild movie, like just the structure of it, you know what I mean? So that definitely caught me off guard and took me out a little bit, but like I totally understand why they did it and like appreciate it. Like it's really a cool like cool way to do like just a coming of age story. It's not like just like a weekend or like whatever like most of them are. It's like here are 3 different parts of this person's life. Like it's so cool. And like just to see like just someone struggling with these things, man. Like I love movies like this. Like I love just walking in other people's shoes, like other experiences, and just seeing like how fucked up it could be for some things. And like this movie, it does it so realistically that it's like, fuck, man. You feel like, I feel like, I don't know. If you don't feel in this movie, like I don't know what to tell you because that's crazy. But yeah, like from a filmmaking perspective, this movie was gorgeous, dude. Like I think it was, I don't know if it was like a quote or whatever, but like the director was saying like he purposefully stayed away from a documentary style approach, which I kind of appreciate because I liked the weird camera angles and the like clear picture and lighting and all that stuff. Like, I don't know. I just really liked that about it. Instead of just being like handheld or like super, I don't know, low quality camera and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is there to say, man. I feel like Jay summed it up pretty good. I don't know what to rate it either because I'm like over here like I could have watched a movie about each of these 3 acts and not getting that much of each one. just a little bit of a letdown, but it's like that's how it is.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I guess I'll go like an 8.5. Like this conversation definitely helps. Like I'm like over here feeling. I'm like, damn, dude. Like all these shots were so good. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm right there with Taryn. I agree with a lot of his same thoughts on the film overall. I think, um, as I've kind of mentioned earlier, it's it's almost like too realistic. It's so realistic, and I think at some points it is like to its detriment, where it turns into, is this good storytelling? Because in more of a traditional sense, like I wanted more out of the relationship between Chiron and Juan. Like I wanted to see that thing, but in a heartbeat, Juan is gone, and Chiron's a teenager, and it just moves on. And I'm like, okay, that's life, right? And it happens, and a lot of the writing is, especially at the end, it was like so good, but also so awkward, and it made you feel uncomfortable. But I'm kind of torn between, is that masterfully done, like, or is it just like I'm feeling uncomfortable, so this is weirding me out kind of thing. I was struggling with that. But you can make the argument like that's what art is. Like that's what this movie was trying to do. It was putting you into that situation and making you feel so much. Like Terrence said, I mean, if you don't feel from watching this movie, like I don't know, like this just fucking this movie
Yeah.
was made to like make you fucking feel, and it did. I think, yeah, I think what holds me back is just I wanted more out of. I just wanted to see Chiron come out of his shell more, and that was the ultra realistic part of it, is that like he just literally couldn't, not because he was like just afraid of showing his emotions or whatever it is, like he literally could not to survive. Like he had to make these conscious choices to, this is the world that I'm living in, and this is the man that I have to be to survive in this world. And you know I don't know. Well done for writing it that way and for telling the story that way. Um, but as far as just a film adaptation, just like a storytelling view, I think there was something to be. They left something to be desired from there. So that's why I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards, not my favorite A24 for sure, but still a great, great film. And I think immediately after I finished watching it, I was like, huh. Like me and my girlfriend looked at each other like, that that was interesting. Like I don't know how I feel about that. And I think this conversation really, that's why I love having these. Like it really unpacked like, oh, like this is what I feel, and this is why I feel that way. And um, this movie is beautiful. I mean, it is a work of art, and it really helps the audience like see through Chiron's eyes, and kind of try to take a walk in their shoes for a brief second. And for that, it's great. It is great. So with all of that being said, I'm kind of right there in between Darren and Jay. It's like an 8.7 out of
Yeah.
8.7 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's see what that
That's
puts
fair.
us
Fair scores.
Oh, what did I do here? Oh, I divided by 4. Jesus, I was like, how did we get a 6? Hold on, we got a 9, an 8.5, and an 8.7. 8.73. So yeah, right in between. Great score, great movie. I'd actually be curious to see other things, that came out of Barry Jenkins, that came out of this director. Was there other one we were thinking
Beale
about?
Street.
Yeah.
What is it called? If Beale Street
Yeah.
could talk or something.
Yeah,
Something like
there's
that,
some
yeah.
other. Yeah, he's known for some other stuff, so I'd for sure be curious to see that. But yeah, so we landed at an 8.73 on this one. We'd love to know what you guys think. Let us know what you rate this movie out of 10. Leave those comments anywhere you find this video. Find all of those filmfumblers.com, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that you can find there. Next week, that is going to be February 13th, we will be reviewing Queen and Slim. So tune into that one. That one's available HBO Max, I believe.
Yep.
So yeah, find it there. Does that cover it? You guys got anything else to add? I think that
No, I
about
think
does
that
it.
does it.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your night. See ya. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.